harvest harmonics and happy September. This is the year where all farmers get all jacked up and we're all like, yeah, let's get the harvest done. Let's finish off this year. I'm all jacked up because I live in Florida. So at the end of this summer, it's been a brutal summer so far. And you wouldn't notice by the background here, which is one of our trials in India we just wrapped up. But excuse me, Pakistan, sorry. But it's been a brutal summer, and we capped it off with a nice little hurricane, which narrowly missed us. And hopefully everybody in the upper panhandle didn't suffer too badly from that one. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about case studies in sustainability. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, okay, our crop booster is one of the new technologies for sustainable farming, but I really wanted just to take a step back and let you guys know what kinds of things are considered sustainable and what kinds of technologies are really supporting sustainable agriculture. Because I think there's a myth out there. And that myth is that if you're going sustainable or you're using regenerative ag or you're going organic, that you're going to lose yield, you're going to lose a lot of money, and it's going to be super expensive, and you're going to not be as profitable. Okay. That myth is a myth, right? And that's a myth that's been based upon some sort of idea that things stay the same, right? Maybe 10, 20 years ago, that would have been a myth where you really didn't have a lot of support. You didn't have a lot of high-tech inputs. You didn't have a lot of high-tech equipment like our crop booster. You didn't have new technologies that are supporting regenerative and sustainable agriculture. But it's 2023, folks. I mean, there's been so many innovations out there that are making sustainable and regenerative farming and organic farming for that matter very much compatible with what we call conventional growing or chemical based farming. And I want to show you a few case studies where we've been able to help farmers improve their sustainability but also improve their input cost and improve their overall yields. Okay, so I'm going to show you just a few examples of that. Again, I'm not going to go into super detail about our product and our what we're doing specifically, but I do want to show you some examples of how sustainable farming can be super lucrative. Okay, so again, I'm going to take these case studies that we've already shown. Again, I'm going to kind of skip through some of my presentation because this is not necessarily only about our crop booster. And by the way, while I'm doing this, while I'm finding these examples for you guys, please, if you have questions, whether it's about our product or about sustainability or about transitioning from chemical-based farming to sustainable farming methods, then please put them in the comments here. If you're watching it on Facebook or you're watching it on YouTube, put them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them as I get them, because we definitely want to make sure that we're making this interactive, right? I like to have people ask questions. I like to have people, give me their comments, give me their feedback, that kind of stuff, because that really helps me determine what is most important to you and how I can be most helpful to you. Okay. So while I'm doing that, but I'm gonna skip through some of these examples. But one of the key things that we see in terms of sustainability, one of the comments that I get is soil health. Okay, and I'm going to give you a few examples right now of soil health and how we're helping to improve that. But some key things to look out for, and this is something we're working with Liberia, the country of Liberia, on several trials on many crops, because when you start having a lot of trouble with insects and a lot of trouble with nematodes and a lot of trouble with funguses and those types of pathogens that are killing crops off, a lot of times you would think maybe that's weather or certain things. What that usually is a symptom of is poor microbial balance. Okay, that doesn't always mean that you don't have good microbes in the soil. It might mean that some of the microbe balance is off. So you have some of the pathogenic species of microbes that are overwhelming the good microbes that are actually enhancing plant growth. And this was an example, this case study back in 2021, where we were testing this with Sedej. This is one of the government trials that we did down in Ecuador on rice paddies. Now, obviously the picture's showing the difference in fresh weight, but the real key here was they were having a tremendous problem growing rice down there because of fungus, and more importantly, because of nematodes. Now, nematodes, for those of you guys who don't know, are small single-celled organisms that typically feed on plant roots and other plant material, and they start to kill the plants from within, right? Now, that becomes a big problem, and nematodes in general become a big problem, usually where we've killed off the beneficial microbial populations. And again, that soil balance has become off. I'm not talking about imbalance of nutrients like nitrogen or phosphorus or calcium or those things. I'm talking about imbalances of microbial populations. Again, In an ideal world, you're going to have a soil that has a rich plethora or rich mix and diversity of different types of microorganisms, because in nature they tend to find a balance, right? They tend to find where the nematodes are held in check by certain other microbes and vice versa. So they wind up having a balance, and that's where you have the ideal plant growth. Again, in this particular situation, down in Ecuador, they're having a big problem with that because the microbial population had been unbalanced. And just with the use of our crop booster, we were able to sort of bring back a lot of the healthy microbes and restore that balance. And as a result, of course, you see a much bigger difference in fresh weight and yield. Okay, and that's something that can be very important. Now, I did mention fungus. This is a different farm down in Chile. This was a blueberry farm. Now, here you had a big problem with torrential rains that rained for a long period of time. And then after the rain stopped, you had humidity. Well, what happens when you have a lot of heat and humidity is, of course, fungal outbreaks, right? And sustainable farming would normally, non-sustainable farming, you'd probably just spray the berries or lose the crop. And that's what happened to a lot of the growers down there. But from a sustainability point, you want to make the trees and the plants healthier. And again, that goes back to soil health as well. And that's going to provide a sustainable way to prevent these types of things. Again, the blueberries you see on the right were treated with Kiminasi, and they're a more sustainable solution because we're just making the plants healthier. If you can really restore plant and soil health, you're going to eliminate a lot of the problems that you otherwise would face. Okay? Again, I'm going to not necessarily go through all of my case studies for my product, but I wanted just to highlight how sustainability can really enhance what you're able to do with your crop boosting, with your yield here. Okay, I'm going to again just skip through to the end here and give you this idea. So this example here, which you can't see in the picture, unfortunately, I have to get my other picture, was a situation where you had a tremendous amount of insect damage. Now, over in India, this is a big problem. In fact, we're having kind of almost a war in India in agriculture because there's a lot of push to sort of grow organic and chemical free, and there's a lot of pushback from a lot of the farmers who are saying, no, our insect problem is so bad and our fungal problem is so bad that we cannot grow food without heavy chemical usage. In fact, a lot of them will just fertigate their entire irrigation schedule will be always filled with pesticides and fertilizers. And unfortunately, that is not actually helping the problem because, again, those microbial functions, those microbial populations in the soil do not like fertilizer, especially chemical fertilizer. The reason being is chemical fertilizers typically increase your saline content or your electrical conductivity. And again, beneficial microbes do not like a heavy salt environment. They prefer a lower salt environment. So if you're using a lot of chemicals, then you're going to boost that sodium content in your soil, and you're not going to see a good, healthy balance of microbial function. So just like we're doing in Liberia, we're going to be running some trials where we're using our crop booster, but we're also recommending certain microbial amendments that will help rebalance those biological systems within the soil. And that should take care of a lot of these heavy insect problems. Okay. Again, I want to show you just an example of water usage, because water usage is, again, another hot button. And it's something that we don't necessarily think about in terms of sustainability. However, it's very important because in a lot of areas we're seeing the aquifer start to dry up, where there's heavy droughts, especially for long periods of time, you'll start to see a lot of droughts, and you'll start to see that you don't have the water table that you need for healthy growing. And that means you have to drill down further, and then you start getting more iron and more sodium and that kind of stuff, which is not healthy for the plants or for the soil either. Now, this was an example in Chile where we were testing this on almond, our product on almond trees. And again, this was a farmer that was looking to transition to sustainable agriculture. He was looking to get away from the heavy chemical use. And again, he wanted to use our crop booster as a way to bridge that gap so he can actually make that transition without losing a ton of crops. And in this particular case, it was very interesting because he found that with our system, we were able to break apart the compaction in the soil and actually allow those microbes to move and become more modal. And that allowed water and nutrients to flow to the soil more efficiently. And that enabled him to save 65% of his overall water usage over the course of a year. Now, I know in California, they had a nice rain this year, but they had 7, 8 years of drought where, and I don't think that 1 year of good rain is going to necessarily improve that, right? It's going to just handle that situation. So they're going to need 3, 4, 5 years to really build back the water table and the aquifers to really get back to healthy growing. But the almond growers there have been complaining of not enough water to grow their trees, and a lot of growers are saying, I'm not even going to just grow this year. I'm just going to let it fall on the ground. Well, we don't have to do that. And the way you can do that is by making the soil healthier again and using those sustainable practices and the regenerative practices to really start rebuilding your soil. Now, one thing you should understand here is that yes, you can get results like this in the first year sometimes, but a lot of times this type of sustainable approach is a transition period. You have to be thinking in your mind, a 3, 5 year, maybe even 10-year plan when you're talking about sustainability, because you're not just going to go cold turkey and not fertilize. Although we are running some university trials now without any fertilizer, just to see if our crop booster is enough to keep the plants going without fertilizing. But most likely, you're probably going to see a 20 or 30% differential as opposed to 100%. So we don't recommend going completely cold turkey from one year to the next. However, that is a transitional period where maybe over a 5-year period, you can cut your fertilizer and water usage in half. Okay, here was another situation up in Peru where we did this with grape growers. And again, these grape growers were in the middle of a drought. So they needed something, a sustainable solution that enabled them to grow good quality grapes in a drought situation. Now, in this particular year, back in 2020, all of the growers lost about 30% of their crop because of this drought condition. And yet the treated fields with our Kiminasi were able to increase their yield by 30%. So it had a huge differential between, test and control. But ultimately, it's just a matter of making the plants healthier and getting them more efficient at utilizing water and nutrients. That is the key to sustainability, and to any sustainability or regenerative program or any transitional program is being able to make the plants healthier and more efficient so that they can withstand those different stress factors as they go from that chemical model and come into a more natural, sustainable model. Another example here was at walnuts. Again, 46% reduction in water and a 30% increase in yield. This was on walnuts. Now you see in this picture the reason why we got the difference in yield, because the trees were so unhealthy. They had so much damage due to extra salt in the soil that they were literally dying. The canopy looks very thin. They weren't very healthy. After using our crop booster on those fields, we brought back the canopy and brought them back to a state of health. Again, healthy trees and healthy plants are become more efficient and they use less water and nutrients, right? So that is a huge part of sustainability. And other things like reduction of fertilizer use on flower, 50% reduction in overall fertilizer use by this grower. The plants, again, were more vigorous. He said they just didn't need the fertilization. They did very well on their own. Same thing with rose peppers. And this is on the other side, the pesticide, right? Fungicide, pesticide, etc. This is the first time in 17 years that this paprika grower, this pepper grower, told us they not have to use pesticides, whether herbicides or fungicides or insecticides, right? He didn't have to use any of that. And he said, this is the first time in 17 years I didn't have to spray one of my greenhouses because the crop booster kept the plants healthy. Healthy plants have their own defenses against these things, right? And we want to get back to that in general. And the way to get back to that is to have solutions where you don't necessarily have to do everything on your own, but you can actually have a booster that's going to make up the difference between your chemical solutions and a natural solution. Same thing here on a field trial. This is on tomatoes. Again, the grower said he didn't have to spray any pesticides on his field with Kiminasi because the plants were healthy enough. They had a healthy enough differential there. So if you're looking for more ways that you can grow sustainable, if sustainability is part of your platform, it's part of your program, it's part of your future plans in the next 3 to 5 years, then I strongly urge you to give us a call and let us work with you to help you on that sustainability journey, because we want to make that journey as smooth and as painless as possible so that we can all get to that final goal of having a natural growing method that's profitable for our farmers, that is healthy for people that are eating the food, and also healthy for our environment, because that's a win-win-win situation. That's what we want to get to in the next 10, 20, 30 years. We want to utilize our technologies and our tools now to be able to move in that direction so that we don't have to keep growing in the same way we grew 30, 40 years ago that was actually depleting the soil and ruining our environment. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to be part of that future that we're trying to build here, then email us at service@harvestharmonics.com or give us a call at 727-324-6750. We'd love to work with you so that you can become part of that future of farming today. Talk soon, guys, and we'll see you again.